What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to TTB Ravens Media, bringing you Ravens content every single day. If you want to see the daily Ravens content, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below and turn the notification bell on if you want to get notified every single time I upload a brand new video. Before I get into the video, I want to say this Saturday, right before the Ravens game at 6 p.m. Eastern time, Joshua and I will be going live for 1 hour before the game, and then we'll be going live right after the game. So we will answer any questions you have rather than doing like a preview show where we kind of guess what people want to hear about. We're just going to do a live show and hear what you have questions about. I'll know the full Saints roster inside and out, and I can talk about any matchups that you want before the game. And then after the game, when we analyze the game and see what went wrong or what went right if the Ravens won, analyze the different players that played, because preseason is the ultimate analysis. You have to look at everything. You know, it's not just did you win, which is in the regular season. That's all that matters. Preseason, it's not about winning. It's about how did individual players perform. And now the Ravens have had a history of winning in preseason, but I'm not worried about that. What I'm worried about is how did, X wide receiver play? How did X offensive lineman play? How did X cornerback play? How did all those guys play individually? Because that's what matters. It's a tryout. It doesn't matter the result. What matters is how they play individually. So we get to analyze all of that right after the game. And then I'll probably have more analysis out on Sunday and things like that for other things. But overall, it should be a lot of fun. So make sure to come back. 6 p.m. Eastern time, we'll be starting the live stream. And then we'll try and stream for an hour right after the game. But if we just have a ton of questions, we can go for however long we want. So that doesn't matter. But overall, let's get into this video, and the title may seem pretty positive. St. James Proche is wide receiver one because the dude's been balling. I want to give him his praise, but there are positive notes in this video. But overall, it's kind of a downer because I have to talk about the injuries at the Ravens wide receiver spot. It's really unfortunate what's been happening there, but we can definitely take some positive spins from it and things like that. But Let's get into it. Right at the top of the roster, or what I say is the top of the roster. If you guys have different opinions on what the depth chart is, that's fine. But the top of the roster, in my opinion, is Hollywood Brown, and he injured his hamstring a little while back, and it was kind of an undisclosed injury. It was just like all that was disclosed was like it's a hamstring injury, and they never really said very much about it. They never really said when he'd be back or anything like that. However, from what I've read, from what I've heard, he did come back doing conditioning drills. So he is back on the field practicing. I am yet to hear anything about him playing a full practice or fully, 100% pads on and everything like that. Yet to hear that. If you have heard that, please comment it down below. If somebody does say that in the comments, I will pin it. So then y'all will know. But from what I've read and what I've heard, he is yet to fully practice. And I wouldn't expect him to be playing in the preseason game or anything like that, just because of why risk it? It's not like it's mandatory. He knows he has a spot. The Ravens know who he is. He already has chemistry with Lamar. It's not something that he needs to be rushed back to. So I wouldn't expect to see him in the preseason game or anything like that. But Hollywood Brown is a guy that's been known for these kind of ticky-tacky injuries, throughout his entire career in Baltimore. He came into Baltimore having the list Frank, which is not ticky-tacky. That's a big injury. But he's just been having small things. And we've gotten used to it. Just like, oh, this week we don't have Hollywood. And yes, it's unfortunate. However, this is why the Ravens have addressed the wide receiver position so much. And it may not seem like they have. It may seem like, oh, they're always not getting wide receivers. No, they're getting wide receivers. A lot of them just aren't working out to the level that we're expecting them to. But this year, I think the Ravens have incredible depth. I think it's the most depth that they've maybe ever had at wide receiver. And right now, they definitely need it. So Hollywood, yes, he's at the top of the roster, but like the Ravens have a lot of, I hate the term injury prone, but unfortunately, they get these small injuries. Luckily, Hollywood's never been a guy to just, oh, he missed 5 weeks. It's like, no, he missed a week. And then he came back and he was totally fine. But Hollywood, hopefully he's able to come back soon. I wouldn't expect him for the preseason game, but he may be back fully practicing this week at some point. I just don't really think there's a need for him to play in the game, but we shall see. Next up on the depth chart, Rashad Bateman. I think you can say he's wide receiver too. We saw that video, and I think every Ravens fan thought the worst. I mean, it looked bad. I mean, I saw that video and I was like, is he done for the year? Maybe we could get him back for the playoffs. Like, that's what I was thinking when I saw that video. And luckily, you say luckily, and it's like, oh, yeah, he's not hurt at all. No, he's still hurt. He's a week-to-week injury. John Harbaugh said that he hopes that Rashad Bateman can return for week 1. I would not expect him whatsoever to be playing in any preseason games. Even if he comes back to practice, I wouldn't expect the Ravens to risk it for him. They know that he's been playing very well, and it's not worth throwing him out there. And he may miss week 1, but we shall see. But like, that's a major injury. Like, that's like, that was just really unfortunate to see when we saw that. He just did not look good. He did limp off the field. He got up and just that was really scary. And I think we all as Ravens fans saw that and we're like, okay, who's next up? And we look at the next up and we're like, okay, oh no, Hollywood's also injured. Who else do we have? And then we have 2 more injuries, and they're lower on the depth chart, and Miles Boykin and Deion Kane. That they're back end depth chart pieces, but when we're going into preseason and we're going into practice, the Ravens need wide receivers. So who do they have? They have Sammy Watkins, James Proche, Devin Duvernay, and Tylan Wallace. Now, James Proche and Sammy Watkins have been absolute standouts at training camp the entire offseason, really. And I would expect them to be the top 2 receivers on the Ravens depth chart right now if we were the players playing. And this is no disrespect toward Devin Duvernay, who I am a big fan of, to Tylan Wallace. We just haven't heard a lot about them. And that's not saying they're bad. That's not saying they've been practicing poorly. It's just saying that they've probably been doing what's expected. Whereas, I don't know why I couldn't say a word right there. Whereas, James Proche and Sammy Watkins have gone above and beyond. They have been absolutely balling out. Today, James Proche had a great catch against Marlon Humphrey. He beat Marlon Humphrey. Like, he has been performing to the level that we would hope he could eventually get to. And he's done that in his first ever offseason, going into his first ever preseason. And then Sammy Watkins, somehow, I don't know how, but he came into the Ravens organization and seemingly had perfect chemistry with Lamar Jackson. And it was like they'd been playing together for their whole lives. Like, that's the level of chemistry that it seemed like they've had. I mean, I believe it was yesterday, Lamar Jackson hit Sammy Watkins for a 75-yard touchdown on a deep throw. Like, they just came in and they mesh. They mesh very well. And then James Proche's had a year with Lamar. And he's been just absolutely dominating in practice. And he's making the catches that we saw him make at SMU. He's been, running the routes that we saw at SMU. And he's becoming the player that I hoped that he could become. Because I don't think I ever talked about Proche on this YouTube channel after he was drafted. However, on the original Trust the Bank podcast, I talked about when I first looked at James Proche, I thought Odell Beckham Jr. Nothing after the catch was Odell. But the way he ran routes and the way he caught the pass, I legitimately thought Odell Beckham Jr. And he's starting to look like, oh, hey, he's that guy. He can, and I'm not saying he's going to be, he's just going to come in and be 1,300-yard rookie year Odell, because that Odell was absolutely crazy. But he has similar characteristics, and he could come in and be a key factor. I mean, he could really be wide receiver 4, and I don't think anybody was expecting that. I think everybody heard James Proche and thought back end wide receiver 6, maybe a punt returner. He can be a key contributor, and that's why I'm talking. That's why this video is titled James Proche wide receiver 1, because he could be wide receiver 1, for the preseason. Obviously, with Hollywood, questionable and things like that, but like, it's him and Sammy are battling for that spot to be, in general, wide receiver 3. Maybe Sammy could be wide receiver 2. I don't think Proche's in the 2 mix, but Proche is really battling to be a top tier wide receiver on this team. And that is a major benefit, because we are expecting to have Devin Duvernay, who is playing at the same level that he was last year, which is a good player. And now all of a sudden he's getting pushed back on the depth chart, in my personal opinion. We'll see when the Ravens release their depth chart when they play in the preseason, but that's a good thing. That is a good thing. Like, yes, I love Duvernay. I love Tylan Wallace. I think they both can be very good players in the NFL. I think they can be very good players for the Ravens. But seeing James Proche ball out, seeing Sammy Watkins ball out, it gives me a lot of hope, knowing that we have great depth. And even though players are injured, Lamar is still getting it done. If you didn't know, today was Lamar Jackson's best day of practice throwing the football. He was 17 for 22 in 7-on-7s and team drills. He hit Mark Andrews, I believe, for 5 completions. This was from Jamison Hensley of ESPN. Hit him for 5 completions, but Lamar's getting it done with whoever he has out there. And that's what he's done his entire career. I mean, you look at his rookie year, he had Smokey Brown and Michael Crabtree, who I liked, but they weren't amazing. then, he's gone out there with random wide receivers and he's balled out. Seth Roberts, he's thrown touchdowns to Seth Roberts. He's been balling out with Miles Boykin as wide receiver 1 and 2 in weeks. Like he is going to do whatever he needs to do with whatever wide receivers he has. And the Raiders have great depth. So it's something to look forward to. Something to not be like really sad about is like, oh no, we have to go to these guys. These guys are good. Now, obviously, we hope Rashad can get back. We hope Hollywood can get back. We hope Boykin and Deion King can get back just to, provide that competition and depth. But we shall see in this first preseason game. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Subscribe for daily Ravens content, and make sure to come back for the preseason game special, as well as the post-preseason game analysis and things like that. And that will likely continue throughout the entire preseason and NFL season. I'll try and do that for every single game if I'm able to. And Joshua and I are going to be there. It's going to be a lot of fun. Make sure to come back then. But I will see all of you again